Hi guys, I'm Mike.
And I'm Ash.
And this is F1 Fanatics. So guys, we are here for our race review podcast. It is a Tuesday, the time it always comes out, 5 PM. It's ready for you guys. Don't forget, if you are new to the channel, you can subscribe to it and click that bell notification to keep up to date with all our latest content. And in the top right corner there is our Twitter handle where you can also follow us to keep up to date with all the latest F1 news, and we like keeping in touch with you guys on it as well. So, race review, what our structure is going to be. I'm just going to go through 1 to 20 of how the race finished. If you don't know what race finishing was, from there, we'll tell you, we'll let you know. Then we'll talk through the main talking points of the race before talking through our winners, losers, our rookies, and what we thought the order was. Are we kind of going, no, our ones to watch? No?
No, that's a preview one.
That's a preview one. We're not till that. That's pretty much our review rounded up there, and then we go and tell you probably what's coming ahead in the week break before we head over to Singapore. But we should probably get on with it now. Right, so we should get onto it. I'm the one saying 1 to 20. So number 1 was Charles Leclerc, his second ever Grand Prix win, and it was a fantastic dominant display by the Ferrari driver, hung out to dry by his teammate Sebastian Vettel, having to fend off the Mercedes all by himself, and he got that first position. 2 was Valtteri Bottas. 3 was Lewis Hamilton. 4 Daniel Ricciardo. 5 Nico Hülkenberg. 6 Alexander Albon. 7 was Checo Perez. 8 was Max Verstappen. 9 was Antonio Giovinazzi, a career best performance in his home Grand Prix, which was fantastic for him. 10 Lando Norris, finishing off the points finishers. Outside the points, you had 11 was Pierre Gasly. 12 was Lance Stroll, whose race was rather affected by the guy in 13th, which was Sebastian Vettel. 14 was George Russell, started there and finished there, pretty decent from the Williams driver. 15th was Kimi Raikkonen, he wasn't too happy with the weekend. 16 was Romain Grosjean, and the last classified finisher was Robert Kubica in 17th. Then our retirees in order was Carlos Sainz. He had to retire due to a wheel not being fitted properly in the pits. Second to retire was Daniel Kvyat with an engine failure. Just coming out of the pits, he had to retire just after turn 2. And then the third retiree, I wasn't sure what the problem was on K-Mag.
I don't know.
Maybe they were just like he was too slow, as it was a bad weekend for Haas. But he was the third and final retiree. But now we get into the instance, and I feel the only place to start with the Tifosi in full voice was that second career victory for Charles Leclerc, isn't it, Ash?
So yes, Charles Leclerc. Fantastic race for him, winning in front of the Tifosi. First Ferrari win at Monza since 2010.
And who won there, Ash?
I think you know. Fernando Alonso was the winner.
And funnily enough, he was at the circuit this weekend watching it.
But rumours are he left early.
Why? Because he was no longer the last Ferrari winner.
Potentially the reason, but yes, supposedly he did leave the race early. But in terms of Leclerc, dominated the race weekend. Fastest or close to being the fastest in practice, all 3 practice sessions, even in the mixed conditions. Obviously had pole position somewhat controversially if you're a Sebastian Vettel fan.
If you want a full rundown of what the hell happened in that qualifying session, Ash did his best on our qualifying reaction video, so that probably sums up that better, doesn't it?
Did miss a few things though, but mainly because the big talking point, but yeah, it was a farce of qualifying. But Leclerc did get pole position, and then in the race itself showed very good pace throughout, and definitely got the elbows out, which I know is something that we have slightly differing views on.
Oh yeah, we certainly do. Should we go into my differing views, or are we talking about...
You pick. Do you want to discuss how he performed or differing views?
Well, I think this is his best race in his career to date. I mean, obviously, you could say any race that he's won and only winning 2, it's a small pool to pick from.
Flip a coin.
Yeah, but you could put Bahrain into that as well, because he drove very well in Bahrain before that. But I just feel, without any support from his teammate, the Merc was chasing down. He was on the hard compound as opposed to the medium compound with the Merc. The Merc had a lot more pace than I think Ferrari and a lot of people thought that they would have. But that Ferrari pace advantage on the straight was still just enough that he couldn't afford to make any mistakes, and he defended for his absolute life out there. And I think we can't have it one way of going, we don't want the stewards to be involved, not for penalties, and then be a little bit upset. I think it's really hard, and it was on the line racing. It was a bit like Max Verstappen's overtake on Charles Leclerc at Austria. It was on the line as opposed to whether it was fair or not. But, you know, he's competing for championship points, his second ever career win. Lewis Hamilton's experienced enough, and he just was naughty. It was late making the moves. It was very on the line, like I said, why he got the black and white flag, but I think it was just about fair. He drove a fantastic weekend, and Lewis and Bottas just couldn't find a way past him.
I agree, and this is where we do slightly differ on our views for the defending that Charles Leclerc performed in the race. So I am more than happy for the race stewards to use the black and white flag as a warning, because we want the wheel-to-wheel racing. The move that Leclerc pulled on Hamilton was borderline, the first one, because had Hamilton not taken the evasive action of going onto the grass, there would have been contact, which we don't deny. And yes, that one is very close to being a penalty, but black and white flag was sufficient in that there wasn't contact and both drivers were able to continue the battle after Hamilton had rejoined the track. The reason I think Leclerc then should have had a penalty is because the way Michael Massey, the race director, described the black and white flag was as effectively a yellow card, as in the likes of football. But his move that he then pulled after missing the first chicane, which, no penalty there at all. He missed the chicane, but he didn't have a lasting advantage because Hamilton was then able to attack. But through the Curva Grande, when Hamilton was then about to make the move to the inside and he checked back late to the left, he's had his warning for making a move under braking and then has done it again. So if you're going to stick to the rules of racing, at that stage he should have received a penalty. Are you going to be the race steward that gives a penalty to a Ferrari that is winning the race at Monza? No, because you wouldn't want to, because you would not make it out of the track alive. But it is one of those where if you're going to give the warning, you then need to follow it up with a penalty if it is done again. In Spa, we saw the black and white flag used and there was no incident after. It was used effectively. Here, I don't think it was correctly applied because of that second offence.
My argument would be I think the second offence one is a really good argument there. Lewis didn't seem to have a problem with that one though. His more one he seemed to have the problem was the first incident that he got black and white flagged for, in terms of having to be forced to brake to back off and not go for the corner. And also in terms of racing etiquette, if the car is in front, which Leclerc was, the corner is his, and his movement was then actually onto the racing line, which is on a corner, and Lewis has to back off because he's not in the position to then take that position. What he was going was, Mercedes had the advantage in the corners over Ferrari, and he was like, this is where I'll get him because it's just too quick on the straights.
The only issue we've got is by not giving a penalty for those sorts of moves, it's then we're going to start getting to a stage where a driver will attempt an overtake around the outside, knowing that there's the potential for contact, because then if there is contact, the other driver's going to get the penalty, and there's going to be the opportunity to take that risk of contact. So it is one of those where we do want to see wheel-to-wheel racing, and I definitely think the use of a black and white flag is the best way to go. The teams want it. It's just how you follow up after that's the issue on this one.
It'll be fine-tuning. I think no one wants the incident that happened in Canada again, where the race lead was decided there. An adjustment of the penalty we suggested that, letting Vettel give the place to Hamilton would have resulted in better racing. But yeah, there's going to be fine tuning. They might go too lenient, and we might then have to be a little bit harsher as it goes along. But at least they're trying to allow it more the battles to be decided on track, and rather than by people off the track in the stewards' room.
And that's the thing. Had it just been that one incident, I would have been fine with the black and white flag. As I say, it's having that second one, and if you are going to be saying it's a warning, it's then.
I think I've got it cleared up. By that stage, they'd made a lot of penalty decisions already.
Yes.
I reckon they were exhausted. They're like, I can't give another penalty.
They couldn't keep track of them all. There was a period I think there was a period of 4 or 5 laps where
it's just like penalty.
You got
penalty.
Well, you had Vettel, Stroll, Raikkonen, Albon.
Yeah, those were the 4, I think.
That was it, wasn't it?
Yeah.
But you had all of those penalties be applied in about 4 or 5 laps, so there was a lot of penalties.
So we figured it out. They were just exhausted.
Yeah.
We understand, guys. We struggled keeping up with it as well. We forgive you. The Tifosi forgive you. I think, yeah, talking about Leclerc, fantastic. Round that up. That was absolutely superb drive from him. Moving on to his closest competitors and the Mercedes, and I thought, I think you want to say about it just being a really good all-round car.
It is. I think the last 2 races have shown the balance of the Mercedes, because neither of these races were we expecting them to be as close to potential race wins, and it's weird saying that Mercedes are close to getting a race win this season. But that's the strength of their car. They have found a balance where other teams haven't. And we said it in the race preview, if there's a Ferrari car built for Monza, it's this one. But it only seems to be built for Monza. And whereas the Mercedes, every track, they've been competitive other than Austria. Because even in Germany they were competitive, just things went against them. So the car is a very strong car in every aspect in terms of engine and aero performance, which is great, and it's nice to its tyres.
Yeah, you just feel someone at the Ferrari going, right, so we've got a superior engine, how do we get the best out of that? Well, probably the power element of it is to kind of maximise that, so we'll have a low downforce car. So like someone in a room has gone, this sounds really good in principle, and no one's gone in and gone, yeah, but the majority of the calendar isn't that. Like going, sorry, what? How does this work?
If you were to put the Ferrari engine into the Red Bull, then you sort of end up getting what Mercedes have done, really. Yeah. They've got the balance.
You have to sacrifice a bit of power for those aerodynamic packages, and just the reliability of getting through everything.
You need to build a car that is going to get you the best results on all of the circuits on the calendar, not pick and choose where you want to be competitive. And the Mercedes car looks incredibly balanced, And yes, at the start of the season there seemed to be that both Hamilton and Bottas were wrestling with the car to keep it on the track, but that seems to have gone away now, and the car does seem a lot more smoother. So
yeah, I think in terms of looking at the race for the drivers as well, both driver ratings video was out yesterday. I gave them both 7 out of 10s because Hamilton just wasn't able to find a way, and he did have that kind of tyre advantage like he had. Like Hungary was all about Max versus Lewis, Monza was all about Lewis versus Leclerc, and he just wasn't able to find a way. Obviously the Ferrari advantage over Mercedes was greater than the Red Bull advantage what they had over Hungary. In fact, Mercedes probably was greater than the Red Bull.
Shall I put an unpopular opinion out now?
Oh.
Only because I've just thought about it in my head, which is always weird.
It's just plucked in. Go for it.
The Mercedes was too competitive for its own good at this race. And the reason I say that is if you look at Spa, when Hamilton pitted, he came out behind Vettel, which then held him up. Here, Bottas and Hamilton were both so close to Leclerc that when Leclerc pitted, Bottas was 17 seconds up the track, which meant to be able to have the advantage that Ferrari had been able to do the week before, they would have to have completely compromised Valtteri Bottas and just left him out, which meant they didn't have the opportunity to potentially have a roadblock.
Well, it's essentially, I think you sent me a text during the race, was like going, am I watching a rerun of 2018? Sebastian Vettel spinning out early on, and then Kimi Raikkonen holding off the Mercedes before falling later on. Obviously Leclerc didn't fall later on, but the difference in that race is what you talked about in terms of Bottas 2.0 is clearly he didn't benefit the team this time because he was again said too competitive.
Exactly. So
yeah,
weird thing just came into my head, so put it out there.
There you go. Do you agree? Do you agree that Mercedes, in a strange thought, was too competitive, and being too competitive actually hindered them in winning the race?
Yeah, hindered them in winning the race because had they kept Bottas out that length of time, then he wouldn't have got a podium. So,
and I think Valtteri Bottas, this was the prime example of showing in the race of why he is a number 2 driver and just not up in that bracket of the elite drivers, because he had his chance, and if Hamilton had the chance that Bottas had, I think Leclerc might have been staring at second place, because Leclerc made a mistake later on and Valtteri was able to make a second up in the gap. And then obviously the positioning of Norris made it difficult, and he missed his braking point, which then forced him to go deep into turn 1 and lost all that advantage, and then he pretty much lost a second in that corner and was never able to recover, and that was in the last laps. But you just think a guy who competes at the top level, when he kind of sniffed the blood of Leclerc out in front and saw that mistake and hunted him down, the elite driver would seal the deal. Had it been Hamilton, likely that he would have got that overtake. Had it been an Alonso, probably would have gotten the overtake. Had it been a Max, probably would have got the overtake.
Had it been a Vettel from 5-6 years ago, it's hard to say that really, considering, but had it been a Vettel of 5-6 years ago, probably would have had that overtake.
I mean, you mentioning the V word probably moves us quite nicely onto our next topic, which obviously is looking at Sebastian Vettel, and oh so desperately F1 wants him to be competing back at the top, and old Seb keeps making unforced errors in races, and this one, if the last 12 months has been his worst in F1,
it's not a good start to the next 12.
I think this is probably the worst mistake.
Well, it is. All of the other mistakes have come in wheel-to-wheel racing, and this was...
Well, the Hockenheim he did just drive into a wall.
Well, yeah, okay, alright then, other than Hockenheim.
But he did only damage himself in that.
Yeah.
In this one, this could have been catastrophically bad.
Yes, it was not the smartest thing to do, but before we even do that, I think we've got to just discuss the fact that he was never really on it from qualifying. So
I think he was. I think Vettel would have got pole if they were able to complete those last laps with the Leclerc toe, but he was really annoyed because I did kind of make a comment about it. We won't spend too much on qualifying. I thought it was a dick move by Leclerc for his teammate who had acted as a roadblock at Spa for him. He may not have done it deliberately, and I don't think in Charles Leclerc's character he had it deliberately to affect Sebastian Vettel's chances, and obviously Hülkenberg and Stroll and Sainz were a main part in that holding up at the front as well. But he should have just shot out in front. He was behind Vettel for most of the lap, making it difficult because they then had to figure out at some point how they were going to get Leclerc back in front of Vettel. So I just thought, Charles, he's done you a real good
the one thing I would say though is it did seem like Vettel was a petulant child again at Monza, because all of the complaints he made on Saturday about qualifying, he made last year against Raikkonen.
Yeah.
And here's another one, if he was an out and out number one in the team, which he has definitely lost now.
Yep.
There wouldn't have been any of this issue, and he could have turned around and said, I want the toe first.
Yeah, as much as... Well, no, he was getting the toe at the best part, so that was still a number one thing, because getting it on that last lap, where the track evolution has come into play, that's when you want the toe, on that last lap getting round, I think, rather than your first stint in qualifying. But
Hamilton got his first for Merck.
Yeah, I know. But
and there's a definite number one without the team.
There is. Anyway, what we're saying is qualifying. Vettel moans in qualifying because his teammate hasn't done what he would have preferred him to do in the qualifying. Next day spins out in the race. This spin spun out.
Lost
terrible. Last year you could at least say he was fighting with Hamilton, and so it could have gone either way. This one, chasing down Bottas, just on the accelerator on the curb, spins out, dangerously comes onto the track, makes contact with Leclerc, which ruins his race because, Stroll, God, can you imagine Leclerc?
Well, before that though, he almost got beached as well on the curb.
Oh God. And
there is almost a sense of the red mist comes down when he makes a mistake, and then he makes it worse. So you go back last season, span out at Monza, then lit up his rear wheels to come back. You then look at Japan, when he made contact with Verstappen, once again lighting up the rear tyres to get back going. Go on to Bahrain at the beginning of the season, span, then for no reason other than there must have been red mist, decides he's going to try and drive back to the pits way too fast with a broken front wing, which means the vibration causes it to come off, makes it worse. Here, almost gets himself beached. Red mist obviously comes down with himself because there's no one else that can be blamed for it, and then decides, I'm going to drive back across the track. And I could understand him doing that move had it been on lap 30 or lap 40, because the pack would have been so spread out that that gap was likely to be there.
But it was on lap 4.
And there was no way that the front four, as fast as they were going to have had enough of a gap for him to just drive back across the track. And to end up hitting, well, he almost hit which of the Renaults was it that he almost
hit Ricciardo, I think, because I'm pretty sure Hülkenberg took Ricciardo at the start. And
Hülkenberg overtook Vettel at the start as well.
Well, yeah, so...
but yeah, he almost hit one of the Renaults, probably Ricciardo, and then just he hit Stroll, and once again he's made a mistake. Red mist has come down, and he has then compounded that mistake by making another.
He literally, the mistake was a mistake, but it was a recoverable mistake in itself. But he essentially ended his race at lap 4 when he re-entered, made contact with Stroll, and they had no choice but to give him the harshest penalty.
I messaged you straight away. Well, I messaged straight away saying penalties for both.
Yeah,
because of the Stroll one afterwards.
Obviously, Stroll has had a fantastic start, moving up to 7, and understanding the red mist came through him. Like, he's proven to have a hot head in the past, and I don't necessarily. I understand his mistake to come back on and forgetting that, just trying to get on as much as possible because his was compromised. The one who should have been more clear-headed was Vettel. Stroll's I can understand a little bit more, and I think the stewards understood it a little bit more because they only gave him the drive-through penalty, didn't they?
Yeah. And I think that's because when you look at it, Stroll was still on the track, for one, because how his car had gone, and 2, he had just been hit as well. So it is one of those where you have to take the circumstances of an incident into account when you apply the penalty. And the other big difference was no contact was made between Stroll and Gasly, although Gasly did have to take quite severe
I think it did damage Gasly's race as well.
So yeah, it's a harsh one to say just because there wasn't contact he didn't get the same penalty, which is what the race director came out and said. But I think you do have to look at it as a whole chain of events. Stroll wouldn't have been there had he not been hit. So yeah, it was a bad one for Stroll because he had qualified well, as I said.
First time he got to Q3 that season.
Yeah, and also the Racing Point did have pace, so there would have been another haul of points for them.
Yeah, probably with Perez coming into the points, it probably would have been a double points finish for both of them. I think Vettel, this might be a video idea, so comment below if you would like to see this video. I have seen it kind of mentioned about and on Twitter things. Is that the end of Sebastian Vettel at Ferrari?
Well, he's contracted till 2021.
Yeah, I mean, but obviously he probably will be there next season. But in terms of, Vettel at Ferrari was there to win a title. So is this the end of Vettel's dream of securing a title at Ferrari? Because I think Leclerc's drives and how he's coped with that car is a lot better, and he's adapted to it a lot better than his teammate, because Vettel has not adapted to this car this year. Him and this car do not gel well whatsoever. I think we've spoken about it. Mercedes and Red Bull, they build cars towards their main drivers. Ferrari build what they think is a fast car and they go, you drive it, rather than necessarily tailoring it towards a specific driver within the team.
But when you also look at it, recently Ferrari haven't built the fastest car. You had last season where you could say that for large chunks of it the Ferrari was, but Vettel was still not getting the best out of it. So
I think it's their disadvantage as a team until they look at their competitors, because because the car is so important with the driver, if you build it, you've seen it, and that's one of the main reasons I think Valtteri Bottas has kept his seat at Mercedes, because he's so similar in height and weight and proportions to Lewis Hamilton. It makes sense. Everything is built towards him and tailored towards his driving style, the way it works. Obviously setups you can differ, but that car is
you can have a fast car, but if your drivers can't drive it, then your car's not fast.
Exactly.
So it is one of those where you need to take into account your drivers and their driver style, which we've mentioned Albon's move to Red Bull being perfect because of style of driving. Well, it's the same for Ferrari. You can build the best car in the world, but if your car is undrivable, then you're not going to succeed. And at this moment in time, well, we've said it already, and I've said it in this video already, Vettel has now lost that #1 seat, which in terms of the top teams, the top 3 teams, I would say they're the only one that has a definitive first driver. Both Mercedes and Red Bull, if the driver that we perceive to be the #2 driver is quicker, they will put them ahead, which no doubt yesterday Hamilton would have got the call because Bottas was gaining on both him and Leclerc. So Ferrari have either got to come away from the idea of having a definitive #1, or they need to start designing a car that suits their drivers, and it's going to be a complete culture shock for them because it's not the Ferrari way.
No. I mean, I think they just need to get rid of it because Michael Schumacher was a once-in-a-generation talent, and yet it set up a precedent within the team that is unhealthy and hasn't led to continued success after his loss. The only reason they continued and won that title with Kimi was they were still had the benefits of a really good team in place from the Schumacher era.
And they've always tried to have that big name driver. And when you look at the recent teams, it hasn't worked. Alonso only challenged for 1 title whilst he was at Ferrari. Vettel, you could say in the last 2 seasons he's competed for the title, but only one of those could you say he was an actual challenger for the title, and that was last season. But that dropped away, which, you know, it was down to Hamilton kicking on in the second half of the season, but also the mistakes he was making. So having that big name driver hasn't worked for them recently, and it's shown this season. The driver who is in his 2nd year in Formula 1 is outperforming a 4-time world champion in the car,
which is it's
because
crazy.
he has now moved above Vettel in the drivers' championship as well.
I think a really good, maybe future and forward-thinking partnership for them might well be a future partnership of Charles Leclerc and Daniel Kvyat at the team. I think that would be a very good partnership to him. I'm turning into a bit of a Daniel Kvyat fan. I feel he's been fairly overlooked, and he is putting in really strong performances consistently, and he has that Ferrari link, obviously being the test driver for them last year, and he's certainly better than any of their junior drivers that have come through at the moment. But we all know Mick Schumacher is carrying a heavy burden on his shoulders.
He's got a certain name that definitely fits a Ferrari.
The future. Anyway, we should get back onto the race. We've had, obviously, if we're at Monza, we have to have a bit of a kind of Ferrari chat of the bigger picture with them. But moving on, Lance Stroll. Obviously, we've both been critical of him in the past, and I actually think he started off the second half of the season really well. I think it was a strong performance for him in Spa, and I also think it is a strong performance. This would have been better than Hockenheim for me. I think Hockenheim was just a drive that summed up Lance Stroll to me before, which was he's just a very good driver of being there. He finishes races and he had a knack of being in the right place at the right time, where he would have genuinely driven well and quick in this race. He had a fantastic, he's probably, which give him credit for, one of the best starters on the grid. I think he has taken, I think they said a ridiculous stat, he's made up 55 places from the start of a race.
I'm going to say that that's slightly...
It might be slightly skewed.
That's more than slightly skewed, because he's not been qualifying where that car should be.
Yeah, but still, he is still a good. And where he qualified in Q3, he still made up 2 places on Carlos. Was it Carlos Sainz?
Yes.
Yeah, it was Carlos Sainz and Albon. So yeah, 2 very good drivers.
Yeah, but race weekend as a whole for Lance Stroll was a very good performance, and he was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, and it did ruin his race effectively. So he would have been scoring good points this weekend had that not happened. So we will come on to it later in the video, but it wasn't the weekend he would have wanted. So.
No, yeah, he was robbed of a chance, a very good race, but it's going to be very interesting to see if he carries on this good start in tracks that favour the Racing Point. Will that carry on in the future races? So I think probably now we talk about it is in the winners and losers section of the review, but we'll dedicate a section to them as well, is Renault. They were absolutely superb this weekend, and in fairness, with the budget that they've invested into the team, with the drivers that they have in the team, obviously the big name of Daniel Ricciardo and the experience of Nico Hülkenberg, this is where they were expecting to be at the start of the season. And if Renault are to see the season as a success, this is where they've got to finish for the rest of the season.
Yes, and the qualifying and the race showed the full potential of this Renault engine. It has got very good pace. The one thing we need to see now is something that we've said multiple times, is can they get the reliability out of it? Because if they can, they are going to be making up a lot of points in this second half of the season, because realistically, the only 2 teams that are going to consistently be in that best of the rest category are going to end up being McLaren and Renault. So if they can get that reliability issue, I could see them challenging McLaren. I just think McLaren might have been able to
get too much of a head start like Mercedes have at the top. I just feel if they are going to have any chance of it, they do need another big aero package upgrade before the end of the season, because I think the McLaren has a superior aero package to them. So now on technical circuits where the McLaren have performed well previously in the season ahead of the Renault, they will gain that advantage back over them, because Renault won't have the out and out power advantage what they did in the this weekend, and they didn't do too bad at Spa either. It was just their strategy was woeful from there. But yeah, I think now that probably moves us on nicely to the winners and the losers. So the big winner is Charles Leclerc, his 2nd ever Grand Prix win, elbows out, defending for his life. He looks a much mature driver, and he really, his rate of improvement, I think, throughout the season, it probably, because he's humble and more within himself than Max Verstappen, who's already out there, his maturity levels and how he's been in races with a team like Ferrari, with the pressure of Ferrari. Max doesn't have that pressure at Red Bull, as they're a very welcoming and kind of encompassing family, other than obviously the Red Bull chopping heads program with their drivers. He still has to perform, but not the outside pressure of what is perceived of being a Ferrari driver. And to win at Monza, where they haven't won since 2010, in the way that he won, it was a serious drive, and he is a serious title contender for the future. And you now have to go, if Ferrari can get the car, if Red Bull can get the car, will next year be Lewis, Leclerc and Max in a 3-way fight for the title?
Well, when you look at it, since Canada, he's out-qualified Vettel in every race, There's only been 2 races where Vettel's finished above him, one of which was Germany when he crashed out. So, and the point swing as well. I can't remember the numbers exactly, but well, if you look yesterday, a 25 point.
I think these are nice points to cover out in our video that will be coming later in the week to you guys, where we look at, in 2019, Charles Leclerc versus Sebastian Vettel.
But
who's the better driver on the grid? But who was our other big winner?
The other big winner, we have just discussed them. Renault as a team, fantastic, great qualifying performance, set them up nicely for the race. Where, in all honesty,
I mean, Nico's pace car was brilliant.
Yeah, well, that's the only downside of the weekend. But in all honesty, Renault have had the sort of race that McLaren have been having recently, where no one's really challenged them for that. Yeah, so definite winners this weekend, Renault as a team.
Yeah, I mean, their pace advantage, we were talking about it before coming on camera, was Alex Albon obviously hindered by the qualifying position, but you would still expect the Red Bull, how it has performed this year, to have been getting ahead, or at least challenging the Renault. And he may have got close to Hülkenberg pre 5-second penalty, but Hülkenberg still had about a 17-second gap between him and Ricciardo, I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
So Ricciardo was massively quicker than Alexander Albon, which, yeah, it just showed how much a surprise this performance and what raw potential it actually does have when they get the strategy right, when the drivers drive well, and when they set up the car right. It is an exciting prospect that, if they can get it right, 2021 may be exciting with Renault as a constructor again. Now moving on to the losers, and do you want to start off with that one, Ash?
Yeah, so driver-wise, I've decided to lump Vettel and Stroll together, because I think this is the race where Vettel has now definitely, look, we've said before he has, but this race now has definitely says that Vettel has lost that #1 spot at Ferrari and Charles Leclerc has got it. But because of his mistake and the collision with Lance Stroll, I felt we needed to give him a shout out as being a loser for the weekend, because he would have been in the winners category otherwise.
Yeah, it wasn't a loser in what Vettel was constituted.
No, Vettel was considered a loser because of his mistake. Stroll is by being the victim of that mistake that he comes into this category.
And another loser was Carlos Sainz. Double race retirements back to back, and it's a bit of a mirror of how he started the season, how he started the second half of the season, with retirements that weren't his fault. And yeah, very harsh on him. He was having a very good race. He was challenging Hülkenberg up until that stage, so we can maybe infer that 5th place might have been an acceptable target for him to achieve. But yeah, not fixing on that. I think it was front right rear, front right tyre, front right rear. You're like going, sorry, driver's front. Yeah, driver's front. It didn't fit on properly. He had to retire from the race. Carlos, unlucky. And yeah, do you want to talk about Alpha?
And then team-wise, I've gone for Alpha. Good finish for Giovinazzi, but you had Raikkonen having an accident in qualifying, and then the inexplicable move of sending him out on the wrong set of tyres.
I mean, he started in the pit.
He did, but
how can you get the wrong set of tyres, right?
It doesn't matter where you start. You should be starting on the right set of tyres. So,
but even the pit, you're closer to the tyres. Surely someone's looking at it at the end going, it doesn't look right to me.
No. And
I'm sure this doesn't seem right.
Well, to be fair, they were trying to get the advantage of being able to start on the harder compound, but even though he had that crash in Q3, he got into Q3. He should have been starting on the soft compound. And yeah, how you can make, that's just Everyone knows that rule, so how you make that mistake, I don't know. So team loser has to be Alpha because of that. Just a little Raikkonen under investigation for starting on the wrong tyres.
Right, yeah, that certainly is the...
I wouldn't have wanted to be his race engineer. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, Kimi is brutally honest at the best of times, so that team meeting would have been short, but you certainly would have gone out with the tail in between your legs. My loser in terms of team was Haas again, and breaking news actually today, they have officially split from Rich Energy, so I don't know whether they're going to continue with the gold and black livery for the rest of the season, whether they keep it anyway. That debacle's kind of come to an end, and I think Haas wish this season had come to an end. Grosjean finished 16th, only ahead of Robert Kubica. Like normal Sky coverage, the battle at the front was exciting to watch, but there wasn't really much coverage of the rest of the field, so I had no idea. I think they showed reasonable pace and then just drift back. Magnussen retired, I think we're both not entirely sure were retired for, maybe an engine failure, or maybe like Grosjean in France, a water pressure issue, whatever goes wrong with Haas, maybe he just wanted a rest. He was like, this is pointless, it's another race we haven't done well in, which is a surprise with a Ferrari engine, but hey ho, Haas, chin up, there's always Singapore. We can go, big loser. Which moves us on to a much more positive section, and that is rookie of our rookie orders. And like I said, for those guys who haven't watched our preview or previous talks about the rookies, we do include Giovinazzi in this, even though he technically isn't a rookie. He hasn't had much experience, so we're bunching it in with the rest of them. And you first or me first?
Don't mind.
Right, I think we predicted that Giovinazzi would be top, and for me, I think Giovinazzi was one. I think he started 10th, finished 9th, showed solid pace, very strong race with the Alpha. The cars in front of him, I wouldn't necessarily expect Alpha to beat. They still had an advantage. There were 2 Red Bulls in front of him. A racing point that shows it is very strong on the low downforce circuits, and obviously that exceptional performance by the 2 Renaults. Yeah, I thought very strong, solid performance by Giovinazzi, so he goes number 1 for me. I'm looking at you.
It's still you.
It's still me. Still got another 3 to go. Number 2 is going to be Alex Albon. It is still a strong points finish within. He's finished ahead of Max, although that might be easier because Max started from the back, had damage to his front wing and affected his race, and still finished in the points. But he's finished ahead of Max. Like I said, Red Bull didn't necessarily show pace, and I gave the drive ratings a 7 out of 10. It wasn't an exceptional drive, but it was a solid drive. It wasn't anything more than that. Number 3, Lando Norris. Got into the points, scraped into it. Probably wouldn't have got into points if it hadn't have been for the Sainz or Kvyat retirement. Didn't really get it right at Monza. Don't think he was happy all weekend, other than the fact he was sporting his Valentino Rossi tribute helmet. I think that was probably the happiest that he was, and if you saw on Twitter, I shared a picture of him on the grid before the start in his ridiculous Valentino Rossi mark. And in 4th, like we said before, in terms of it is a little bit unfair on George Russell when talking about him in this category because of how far the Williams is a disadvantage for him, but none of the other drivers did anything exceptionally bad. He didn't do anything exceptionally good. It was solid, finishing 14th. You could say in that Williams car, maybe finishing 14th is exceptional.
It's a Williams car that's got a point.
It is indeed, yeah, with Robert Kubica, of all people. So, yes, there we go. That is my 4, Ash.
Okay, for me, number 1, Antonio Giovinazzi. Yes, that Alpha has got a Ferrari engine in it, so you expect that it should have been able to be getting points. But when you have a look at his performances, he's not really been in and around. He had 1 point before this weekend, so to get to good performance from him. And on the whole, I said it in qualifying that I felt he was actually starting in the strongest position, being in that 11th and 12th bracket, because it did mean that he had that free choice of tyre. So good weekend for him. Number 2, I am going to put Lando Norris. Started, well, it was 19th in the end, wasn't it? Or was it 18th? Because
no, I think it was 16th. Because
was he at the front for it?
Because Raikkonen
started in the pit lane.
Verstappen.
Anyway, grid
was near the back.
He was near the back. Grid penalties for engine issues, and managed to get back up to the points in a McLaren that really, in race pace, it didn't look as good as we were expecting, really. You had Carlos Sainz up there, but still not really the McLaren we've come to expect. Number 3, Alexander Albon. I'm going to be honest, I like Alexander Albon as much as the next guy, but he showed his naivety this weekend in trying to overtake Carlos Sainz around the outside at the first Lesmo. It was a move that was never going to happen, and even he's come out and said that he should never have tried the overtake. So
he's going to make these mistakes, because that is only his 14th race in F1.
No, and I know, but I don't really think
he should be fairly criticised for it. No, I agree. So we are going to expect these sort of performances from Albon because of that lack of experience in an F1 car.
But it was that move that effectively meant that he wasn't then challenging further up where he should have been, because obviously went off, then had to rejoin. When he did come back on, he then got the penalty for gaining an advantage for leaving the track when he overtook Magnussen. So it was just a scruffy race from him. And then George Russell started 14th, finished 14th, but really, even though Alex Albon had that scruffy race, he still scored points and was in a place where Gasly in the same car would not have beaten. So, you know, he's performed at a level that Red Bull have come accustomed to so far this season for their second drive on. So yeah, George Russell, unfortunately, because of that Williams not being able to compete, was 4th.
Yeah. And guys, it's been a long one, but we get carried away sometimes, and I think we had to just talk about the Ferrari, the Tifosi and Charles Leclerc and Vettel in depth this weekend, because it is Monza, and if you aren't going to talk about Ferrari in depth at Monza, then where are you going to talk about Ferrari in depth? Before we do our usual kind of roundup of everything we go, I think we'll give a shout out to our friends over at the F1 Debate Show. Obviously we were very grateful for them to kind of give the time to come on our F1 Fantasy Weekly show last week, but they have just passed 900 subscribers. I think they passed it just before the race started yesterday, so they are obviously on the road to that 1,000. If you haven't seen them and you're checking us out before you've checked them out, make sure you go and check them out, subscribe to their channel. Really a couple of great Geordie guys, and yeah, they know their F1 and they always put out great content. So yeah, there you go. There you go, F1 Debate Show boys. We're making sure they've shouted out a couple of times. We're returning the favour as well. If you like this video though, our race review podcast, give it a thumbs up. Let us know that you enjoyed it. Ash?
Make sure to press the subscribe button so that you're able to have our videos going into your YouTube inbox, and also click the bell icon, because then you will get a notification of when one of these videos has gone live, and you'll be able to see what we are talking about in that one. Mike's going to leave that in because yeah, he's been wanting to do it for a while.
I mean, subscribe. Comment below, what were your thoughts on the race? Did you think Charles Leclerc overstepped the line? Did you think it was just hard and fair racing that was very, very, very close to that line? What did you reckon of the Mercedes? Were you excited by the Renault's performance? And was there any other performances that you feel that we missed that was worth a note in the review? But get involved in the comments below, guys. But you F1 fans, keep racing.